Since my daily ShockCast don't touch on the current news, I want to give you a snapshot of some of what you are missing when you don't subscribe to the Shock Letter or read my articles on megashock.com. First one is two comments from Martin Armstrong, who I hold probably is the most astute observer and predictor of human events. First one is Hard Landing by at Armstrong Economics. This is an important observation from Martin Armstrong. The global economy will fall hard, but the U.S. stock market, not so much. Here's what Martin said, quote, "The hard landing is economic and will have its greatest impact outside the United States. While central banks have sold U.S. treasuries in an attempt to keep the dollar down, the private sector has been pouring assets into the USA, and particularly the Dow, as in the Dow Jones Industrial Index. Our capital flows have tracked a significant shift in global capital flows into the USA, especially from Europe. That should come as no surprise given the chaos in Brexit as well as the May elections. We still do not see a major correction in the Dow. We have been undergoing a shift from public to private assets on a global scale. Therefore, the hard landing will be more economically based, and central banks will try to do something, as in lowering rates. But they have run out of bullets. The Fed has tried to back off on rates after buying into the problem of a hard landing outside the USA. The ECB has been on its hands and knees pleading with the Fed not to raise rates when they will have to continue their QE programs or face sovereign debt defaults." Close quote. I know that we've been hearing a lot about horrible things that are going to happen in the stock market, but I will trust Martin Armstrong's comments over anyone else's. The next one is the Treaty of Rome and 2020, Armstrong Economics. It looks like the EU is going to collapse. Martin Armstrong doesn't specifically say that, and I will be curious to know what he does say in the report that he will be selling. That report is called The Fate of Europe. Those of you interested in the future of the EU should buy that report. What Martin does say is this, quote, "In all the years I have worked around the world with various governments and political figures, I have never seen the entire world in such total chaos." Close quote. Martin Armstrong has worked with some very, very big players around the world. If you hear someone like Martin say this, it's serious. Then we have an American moral collapse. I talked to you about this over the past few days, and it's about pornography, what I was talking about. Well, there's a lot more than that. This one is titled 40 Facts That Prove That America's Moral Collapse is Spinning Wildly Out of Control. And it's from Michael Snyder. If you want proof that America must be destroyed, just read this. Here are just a few that jumped out at me. Quote, "Americans are now more likely to die from an opioid overdose than they are from a car accident. McDonald's feeds approximately 70 million people a day globally. Pornhub, the pornography hub that I've been criticizing, gets more than 78 million visits a day. According to the CDC, the Centers of Disease Control, approximately 110 million Americans have a sexually transmitted disease right now. That is a third of all Americans. Approximately 1/4 of the entire global prison population is in the United States. It has been reported that 1 out of every 4 teen girls in the United States has at least one sexually transmitted disease. It has been estimated that 30% of all internet traffic now goes to adult websites. Suicide is now the leading cause of death for Americans from the age 15 to age 24. The number of American babies killed by abortion each year is roughly equal to the number of U.S. military deaths that have occurred in all of the wars that the United States has ever been involved in combined. About 1/3 of all American women will have had an abortion by the age of 45. An average of more than 100 churches are dying in the United States every single week. The number of Americans with no religion has increased by 266% over the last 3 decades. Close quote. And it will only get worse. Please prepare for judgment. If God doesn't destroy us, he would need to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. Then there's financial corruption and the public pension crisis. Ted Seidel, the greatest retirement crisis in the history of the world, and he spoke to peak prosperity. If you were or are the employee of the United States, state, or local government, your pension is toast. Done, gone. You will be lucky to get 10% of that pension. Wall Street has robbed public pensions of almost everything. What they didn't steal has been sucked away into foolish boondoggles like stadiums and bridges to nowhere. And when all the funds run out, those who are too frail to work and too poor to retire will just die. The corruption is horrendous. The evil is utterly choking in its darkness. You are the victim, and the vile and evil bankers will clap each other on the back as they celebrate their theft from the dead and dying. What a world to live in. And then, moving on to, then Ted Seidel actually also did the video part of it, which was also called Ted Seidel or Seidel, the greatest retirement crisis in the history of the world, and it's on YouTube, and you can find a link to that on omegashock.com. Then there's a top 10 reasons why stealing from the state and local pensions is the perfect crime. That's an article written in Forbes by Ted Seidel. And this is the short article that Ted wrote describing how the dirtbags on Wall Street are stealing billions of dollars. But you'll get more from the video. And as an ex-finance guy, speaking for myself, I can verify that all of what he said is very easy to do. And I watched finance people try to steal as much as they could from their unsuspecting victims that sometimes they called clients. Eventually I got out and never looked back. Never forget that these people are psychopaths and sociopaths. They are evil to the core. Then we have censorship. The next title is Bukhari. Amazon is on a digital book burning spree on Breitbart. Yes, the book burning has begun, and Amazon is praised for its attack on conservative authors. Very few will look too deeply at the hypocrisy of their stance. Here's a quote that illustrates their craven dishonesty. Quote, in 2010, Amazon refused to take down a book defending pedophilia, which is, if you don't know, child rape, on First Amendment grounds. Amazon believes it is censorship not to sell certain books simply because we or others believe their message is objectionable. An Amazon representative told CNBC at the time. Amazon does not support or promote hatred or criminal acts. However, we do support the right of every individual to make their own purchasing decisions. And public and media outcry was not enough to pressure Amazon into watering down its commitment to content neutrality when it came to a pro-pedophile book. But it now only takes the slightest pressure for the tech giant to ban right-wing critiques of religion. Close quote. What insanity is this? It's Amazon insanity. And they're winning. And then we have this one from U.S. Senator Warner, who eyes social media bills for hate speech. Oh, great. Another moron wants to shut you up. And then it's Bob Iger calls for civil discourse, warns Hitler wouldn't have... Bob Iger calls for civil discourse, warns Hitler would have loved social media, from Hollywood Reporter. Unfortunately, there is truth to this. Our country has fallen so low that we are no longer able to speak with any kind of civility with each other. The horrifying behavior that people exhibit online in anonymity is horrifying. It's what happens when your country is no longer Christian. The next article is Austria mulls user registration for online platforms from something called The Local. Unfortunately, this will really be the only answer to those who cannot speak with civility online. They need to be exposed. They need to know that they cannot hide behind their anonymity. Unfortunately, the evil of vile discourse will give governments power to silence all of us. The next link is Cyber Jihad Groups Gets Christians Banned from Facebook. David Wood, YouTube. Here's David's write-up for the YouTube video. Quote, recently David Wood, Sam Shamoun, and Al-Fadi were all temporarily banned by Facebook. Is this all a coincidence? Not at all. A Muslim group called Cyber Jihad has been reporting random posts by critics of Islam, flagging the posts as hate speech, nudity, harassment, etc. And it's working. Following the New Zealand mosque attacks, the social media purge has dramatically accelerated. How can Christian apologists and critics of Islam survive on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Patreon when groups of cyber jihadis are flagging their content? David Wood discusses the issue. Close quote. It looks like David Wood will be taken down from Facebook and eventually from YouTube. The good news is that there are alternatives, and he has accounts there. On Gab, it's gab.com/DavidWood. On Minds, it is minds.com/Acts17Apologetics. On BitChute, it is bitchute.com/channel/DavidWoodVideos. Eventually, I will be taken down also, and you will need to go to these alternatives too. So check them out. Next link is exclusive. Documents detail Google's news blacklist, show manual manipulation of special search results from the Daily Caller. Here's another opportunity to be disgusted. Omega Shock is on the blacklist of these dirtbags, and they have been lying through their teeth in reference to their blacklist activities. These people should be ashamed of themselves, but they don't know the meaning of shame or honor or integrity. The next area is something very dear to my heart because it scares me to death and not very much does. First link is the true feasibility of moving away from fossil fuels from our finite world. The bottom line of this article is that we can't. But the details of why we can't are interesting. Unfortunately, the writer of this piece is an atheist and doesn't know how to communicate with the average person. Basically, what she is saying is that each society is like a living being, and every living being requires energy to survive and grow to its full potential. For human beings, that energy comes in the form of calories. You need a certain amount of those calories to survive and thrive. The same goes for each society, but instead of calories, we speak of energy, or even BTUs, British Thermal Units. Having said that, we could use calories instead of the word energy. For instance, there are 1.400000000 calories in a barrel of oil. Again, that's 1.4 million calories. So, I'm sorry, 1.4 billion calories. That is, yes, sorry, I actually got that wrong. Interesting. Multiply that by tens of millions of barrels of oil that we use every day, and we're talking about trillions upon trillions, quadrillions of calories consumed in each 24-hour period. Now, is there an alternative source of energy to oil or coal? Well, yes, but they don't work as well. It's like choosing to eat grass instead of bread or meat. Try that for too long and you will starve to death. Those who do not will live a stunted and deformed life. So the future of our world is going to be one of death, with the survivors stunted and deformed. And the writer goes into detail about what that would mean. Women will need to bear 6 children so that 2 would survive. Men would need to go back to working with their hands. Only the fortunate few would live past 50. Education, government, healthcare, science, transportation, manufacturing, they would all collapse. Yes, there will be small bits of each, but without lots of energy, they could never be very large. Remember what I have said many times. Traditional pre-oil communities could only support a very few number of people who were not directly involved in farming. It took 10 farmers to support 1 teacher. If they were prosperous, maybe they could support a blacksmith and a general goods store. And we'll all need lots of horses. Oh, and our societies will learn all about starvation when a harvest isn't as good as you had hoped it would be. Read about life in the 1700s. That's where we are headed. Oh, and think of all the death and destruction as the evil among us fight for what they believe to be their fair share. Blood will run in the streets and whole nations will collapse. In fact, it's already begun. Just look at Venezuela. And somewhere in the midst of this crisis of decline, the Antichrist will arrive and promise us a way out of our troubles, if we will only take the mark. The horror of our situation will be so great that we will gladly do anything that offers even a glimmer of hope of escape. Unfortunately, the average person will not see any of this coming until it is far, far too late. It's the end of the world, kids, and it will be truly awful. Then in the same area of peak oil, this link is the next oil domino to fall. Mexico becomes a net oil importer from SRS Rocco report. Well, another oil producer bites the dust. When are people going to wake up to the fact that peak oil is already here? When are people going to wake up to the catastrophic destruction of our civilization that is barreling down upon us? Hello? Is anyone paying attention? The next one is the coming Middle East oil crisis, the collapse of net oil exports, also from SRS Rocco report. So not only has global conventional oil production been falling since about 2005, net oil exports are falling even faster. Again, as I keep asking the question, when will people wake up to this incredible disaster? This is the death of our civilization. Of course, the Bible predicted the death of our civilization and its rebirth as a dark and evil entity, but it's maddening to see everyone calmly ignoring horrifying future. Okay, we move on to world government. This link is Time for a True Global Currency by Jose Antonio Campo, from Project Syndicate. I'm not sure if you want to read that. It's a pro-global currency article. It's written in an attempt to convince you to agree with their foul designs. In fact, here's the last paragraph. Quote, "The anniversaries of the IMF and the SDR in 2019 are causes for celebration. But they also represent an ideal opportunity to transform the SDR into a true global currency that would strengthen the international monetary system. Policymakers should seize it." Close quote. That's disgusting. Hey, it's an anniversary? Let's celebrate by destroying the old world order and creating a new world order. And if a few 100 million people die, well, let's just say that it leaves a little room for everyone else. And the survivors who suffer under brutal poverty won't notice that we are ruling over them. How about that, kids? This next one is we're all being judged by a secret trustworthiness score. And this is an interesting one. You've heard of China's social credit system. Well, here's a system that's a step in that direction, and it could lead towards something incredibly Orwellian. And you have no control over it. In fact, I doubt that you even know about this system. It's called SIFT, S-I-F-T. And it's only logical that they would take us down this path. Then we have Basel III, a revolution that once again no one noticed from the vineyard of the Saker. I do not trust this article. The Saker tends to have a distorted view of reality, so I don't give them a lot of credence. But this one is one of the few articles that gives reference to the new change in the global monetary system. Quote, "The revaluing of gold assets." This is huge, and this article predicts massive transformation and upheaval. Here's an interesting quote. However, why is the decision of Basel a revolution? Because from the autumn of the financial flood in the world economy will begin. It will entail the acceleration of Russia and China's isolation from the dollar system and the crash of the economies that completely depend on the dollar. The vassal countries of the U.S. It will be worst of all for them, and this means that the reasons for increased distancing between the EU and the US will increase in number manyfold. A redrawing of the map of the global union, or redrawing of the map of global unions awaits the world. And the redrawing of these unions will be carried out not least by military methods, and I know someone sneezing in the background, or with this partial use. But in one way or another, reasoning involving force in the world will increase almost to the level of guaranteed war. Almost is our hope for rescue, because the U.S. loses all main instruments of influence on this world, except force. But it's not for this purpose that the Zurich gnomes created this world, so that the U.S. is so simply turned into radioactive ashes. The U.S. will be drenched with cold water like a broken down nuclear reactor, while the world has entered the zone of the most global transformations over the past few centuries. The revolution that so many waited for, were afraid of, and spoke so much about has started. Buckle up and don't smoke. The captain and crew wish you a pleasant flight. Close quote. Please remember that this article was translated from Russian, and I'm unsure if the writer sees the world clearly. But I will be watching for signs that he is right. Just be ready for the worst this fall. Then we move on to Gog and Magog, which will be the worst. Pretty close, anyway. First one is Iran and Iraq reach agreement on air defense cooperation as Washington's pressure grows. Big thanks to Karen J for this one, and it's another big move towards Gog and Magog. Oh, and here's what the leader of Iran said. Quote, during the meeting, Khamenei told the Iraqi delegation that they should expel U.S. forces from Iraq as soon as possible. Close quote. Them's fighting words. Then the next link is U.S. forces evacuate Tripoli as fighting in Libyan capital heats up. This shows that things are getting serious. The only question is how serious it will get. Haftar doesn't seem to have captured much of Tripoli yet, but the fighting doesn't seem to be very intense, even though there has been a lot of shouting from some of the news agencies. The next link is Erdogan and Putin pledge closer military ties in Moscow. S-400 purchase a done deal. From Zero Hedge. Putin and old oink Erdogan, they're making deals. No more NATO for Turkey. And then Iran is preparing to link Tehran to the Mediterranean via a new highway. So, Gog and Magog get a nice big highway and train link. Once everything is set up, we will start to wonder when the attempt to invade Israel begins. They might not even wait for this highway to be completed. By the way, whenever you see a highway being built, always, always, always ask yourself if there is a military reason for that highway. And yes, there's almost always a military reason. Then Turkey threatens to buy even more Russian S-400s if U.S. doesn't cooperate. Oh hey, it looks like Turkey really wants to leave NATO and join Russia's version, the CSTO. Then Erdogan worked hand in glove with ISIS in Syria, claims former emir. This has got to be the worst kept secret of the past 8 years. There has been so much evidence pointing at direct support of ISIS from Turkey that I'm not surprised that so few are talking about this. For crying out loud, their supply lines went straight through Turkey. But if you need more proof of the obvious, this article is more proof of the obvious. The fact that you will not hear a word of this is more proof that the mainstream media is flat out lying to you. Then, Sudan's army topples President Omar al-Bashir after swift takeover of capital. Okay, just remember that Sudan is probably not the Cush that we are looking for from the Bible. Yes, I know that lots of Bible prophecy experts keep yelling about Sudan, but they are probably barking up the wrong tree. Remember that when we're talking about the coalition of Gog and Magog, we're looking for a people, not a geography. Only a small minority of Sudan is part of the Cushite language group. Here's a good snapshot of where the Cushitic languages are spoken. Cushitic languages on Wikipedia, and then there's this one about the Cushitic peoples in Wikipedia. Notice an important sentence in the entry. The Somali language is the sole Cushitic or Kushite language recognized as an official language. Think that one through. Somalia is really the only real inheritor of the name Kush. Anyway, we'll see. So please look at Somalia and stop making a ruckus about Sudan. They might be in Gog and Magog, but stop being so emphatic about it. Watch Somalia. Then the next link is Iran. Is Iran winning in Yemen? Karen J. shared this via email, and this is a very, very serious article. Here's the summary. Quote, the Yemeni revolution will not be confined to Yemen alone. It will extend following its success into Saudi territories. From Iranian lawmaker Ali Reza Zaghani, trusted advisor to Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Then, if the Shia rebels again control the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is the strait that goes into the Red Sea, Iran can attain a foothold in this sensitive region, giving access to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, a cause of concern not only for its sworn rivals, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the Gulf states, but also for Israel and European countries along the Mediterranean. That's from IDF Lieutenant Colonel Michael Segal. Then its hardline elements in Iran appear to see the continuation of the conflict in Yemen as a relatively low-cost and low-risk means of sustaining political, economic, and military pressure on the Saudis. Saudi Arabia's intervention has reportedly cost between $5 billion and $6 billion a month, while Iran's expenditures in Yemen probably total only millions a year. From General M. Firestein, Middle East Institute. Then the Houthis' intransigence confirms their loyalty to Iran's negotiating tactics. These usually begin with implicit approval of negotiating solutions, followed by complete retraction in order to force the international community to make more concessions and impose a fait accompli on the Yemeni government. From Yemeni Foreign Minister Khalid al-Yamani. Close quote. All that I can say in response is yow. Oh, and what is on the other side of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait? That's right, Somalia. We were just talking about them. Kush, remember? And Turkey has a nice big base there, and Iran is friends with Turkey. And of course, Turkey will be a part of Gog and Magog. Notice all the connections that are pointing or including Somalia. Yeah, watch Somalia. And again, as I keep saying, Somalia is Kush, and thank you, Chris, for helping me figure that out. Can you see Gog and Magog coming together? If you can't, you might need glasses. Again, thanks, Karen. Then China and the Antichrist. The link is China selling high-tech tyranny to Latin America, stoking U.S. concern. And it's not just South America, it's also Iran. Chinese surveillance technology is infiltrating every despotic regime that is friendly to China, or even just neutral. And at the moment, no one does surveillance better than the Chinese. The tyrannies of the world are looking at China closely, and they want what China is developing. Orwell's 1984 will be brought to you by Mr. Xi, as in Mr. Xi Jinping. And even though I can't say that I'm right, but China just keeps looking more and more like that red dragon with 7 heads in Revelation. Remember that there are 2 animals that have 7 heads and 10 horns in Revelation, but that dragon in Revelation doesn't seem to be China. I don't know. Anyway, except for the fact that she seems to be giving power to the beast, system that is growing. It seems like that's what China's doing. Always be careful about attempting to twist the book of Revelation. You might think that this or that fits when it doesn't. Twisting Revelation is a deadly, deadly mistake to make, and I will do my best not to do that. The next one is the list of ways China keeps tabs on citizens is getting longer, from The National. or the heraldmailmedia.com. Oh, and here's a nice summary of the most visible ways that China is controlling everyone in China. Tyranny being set up in China is truly amazing. And you have to click the link to get that list. I didn't include it. Okay, in China, the next link, in China, an app about Xi is impossible to ignore even if you try, from the New York Times. This article shows two things. The prototype for the Antichrist before he institutes the mark. Remember, the system has to begin somewhere. And then the desperation of the Chinese Communist Party. Here's the quote that is even most important here, even though the whole article is important. Quote, the app comes as Mr. Xi, who rose to power in 2012, is leading a broader crackdown on free speech in China, imprisoning scores of activist lawyers and intellectuals and imposing new restrictions on the news media. Mr. Xi has spoken frequently about what he calls the need to guard against online threats. He has warned that the party could lose its grip on power if it does not master digital media. There is no national security without internet security, Mr. Xi said in the speech this year. If we cannot succeed on the internet, we will not be able to maintain power in the long run. Close quote. Notice this line, quote, he has warned that the party could lose its grip on power if it does not master digital media, close quote. That's a real fear. It's not a fantasy. Otherwise, the Chinese Communist Party would not have given Xi so much power. The only person who has ever had more power in China than Xi Jinping was Mao Zedong. China is in trouble, and the tools that they are developing to stay in power will be used by the elites and by the Antichrist. Next, millions of Chinese youth volunteers to be sent to villages in echo of Maoist policy. It's from The Guardian. This is more proof that Chinese Communist Party is scrambling for ideas on how to cement their power over all of China. They know that they are in trouble, big trouble. Then we move on to Pete Buttigieg. His last name, again, I think I'm probably going to get it wrong, but Buttigieg seems to be the correct way to pronounce it. How Pete Buttigieg could hurt Trump in the Rust Belt. Here's how Pete is a symbol of America's destruction in just the first paragraph of this piece. Quote, at just 37, he is the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He is a military veteran and a deeply religious gay man who is married but also enjoys sandwiches from the anti-gay marriage Chick-fil-A. He is a Harvard-educated Rhodes Scholar who speaks 8 languages. He is the first ever millennial candidate for president and so far the only Democratic hopeful to appear on the Fox News Sunday show. A deeply, by the way, close quote, a deeply religious gay man? Think that through. And then think about the fact that he's a Harvard-educated Rhodes Scholar. Remember the thing set up by Cecil Rhodes for all those the elite of the elite, the Rhodes Scholars? I'm sorry, but this screams perfect candidate for the elites, and he's also the symbol of America's destruction. Next one is Pete Buttigieg, 2020. Mayor challenges Mike Pence on LGBTQ rights, saying his quarrel is with my creator, from CBS News. Oh, wow, this is bad. Here are 2 quotes that illustrate just how bad. Quote, my marriage to Chasten has made me a better man, and yes, Mr. Vice President, it has moved me closer to God, said Buttigieg, a devout Episcopalian. How can you be a devout Episcopalian? Anyway, never mind. Moving on. I can tell you that if me being gay was a choice, it was a choice that was made far, far above my pay grade, he added to a room full of loud cheers. And that's the thing I wish the Mike Pences of the world would understand that if you have a problem with who I am, your problem is not with me. Your quarrel, sir, is with my creator, close quote. This guy calls himself Mayor Pete, and he is a serious contender for the top slot in the Democratic Party. If he becomes president, and I believe that he will one day, then America's fate is sealed. He appeals to Christians, the lax, lowercase c kind of Christians. He appeals to homosexuals. He appeals to conservatives. He basically appeals to everyone except the hardcore right and the hardcore left. Oh, and the hardcore Christians, not them either. But because America has fallen so low in morality, his appeal will be broad-based. And his Democrat opponents? What a bunch of losers. None of them have the appeal that he does. None of them have that fresh-faced, all-American look. None of them. So America will vote for an openly homosexual guy who blasphemes God by calling himself a Christian. Ouch. God help us all. And if you want a prototype of the Antichrist, that man is a prototype for the Antichrist, not Donald Trump. The next one is Buttigieg attracting praise from an unexpected audience. Conservatives from Politico. It scares me that this guy appeals to anyone in America. He is a symbol of how far America has fallen, and the fact that there are conservatives who are saying nice things about him means that he's a dangerous player. Very dangerous. He might not win the next election, but he's young, only 37. Then Mayor Pete Buttigieg's very public Christian faith from The Atlantic. Here is more on the Buttigieg phenomenon. In fact, the first paragraph says it all. Quote, the mayor of a medium-sized Midwestern city, Rhodes Scholar and a war veteran who is liturgically conservative and cites St. Augustine as one of his religious influences, is running for president. He's also a Democrat. He is criticizing the current president, a Republican, for his infidelity and lack of family values, and he's gay. Close quote. This guy has something for everyone, and yes, he's right about Trump and his infidelity and lack of family values. And those looking for an alternative to the corrupt politicians that are currently in a mad scramble for power will gravitate to this guy. He looks sincere. He sounds sincere. He might even be sincere. Sincerely wrong. And that ambience of sincerity will draw millions to vote for him. But people tired of the corruption and dishonesty of our current political system will vote for him. That, my friends, is how the Antichrist will rise. And no, I am not saying that Buttigieg is the Antichrist. I'm saying that he's a kind of prototype. Never forget that the Antichrist will radiate trustworthiness, sincerity, wholesomeness. He will be likable and tell you everything that you want to hear. Then the next one is the unlikely rise of a 2020 Democratic primary contender, Pete Buttigieg. Here are two quotes that speak volumes about what I am talking about here. Quote, a Sanders fan might argue that the media is giving Buttigieg outsized coverage considering his relative position in the polls, and perhaps they are. But politics is about the narrative, and he has that in spades right now. For many, Buttigieg seems like somebody who could embody the perfect antidote to the Trump era. He just seems so gosh darned Midwest wholesome. He is the Marie Kondo candidate. He sparks joy. Close quote. And then the next quote is, if elected in 2020, Buttigieg would be both America's first openly gay president and the youngest person ever to occupy the Oval Office. A Rhodes Scholar and Naval Intelligence Lieutenant who served a 7-month tour of duty in Afghanistan, Buttigieg was elected as mayor of South Bend when he was just 29. He is an accomplished musician. He played as a guest piano soloist with the South Bend Symphony Orchestra in 2013, and a polyglot who speaks 8 languages, including Arabic, French, Maltese, and Dari. In March, he encountered a journalist from Oslo after a campaign rally. Buttigieg, to her astonishment, responded to her to her questions in fluent Norwegian. In April, he pulled the same trick with an Italian reporter. Close quote. Oh, and here's another. Buttigieg's meteoric rise, as well the elegance and empathy that seems to radiate from him like heat, lending viral power to all his public appearances, invites comparison with a young Barack Obama. At a time when people are aching for hope and path forward that we can all walk, Buttigieg is a relentlessly positive person, Obama's former chief strategist David Axelrod told The New Yorker admiringly in February. Close quote. The Democrats are in desperate need of someone who looks wholesome and untarnished by corruption. This is the only guy in the Democratic stable of candidates who has a chance at making Donald Trump look bad. Everyone else in the Democrats make Donald Trump look like an angel. And then the shortest way home review. Pete Buttigieg as president in waiting from the Guardian. Never trust the Guardian newspaper further than you can throw the whole organization. But this observation in their subtitle to this piece is unsettling. Quote, the 37-year-old mayor of South Bend, Indiana, has written the best political autobiography since Barack Obama, close quote. That is a big statement, and I'm concerned that this reflects his future, just as the title of this piece seems to reflect his future. His story, his background, his intelligence, his connections, his wholesome image, his everything screams future presidential material. And he's a homosexual. This guy is the elite's pick for president, either in 2020 or in 2024. No one else will come close to this guy's image. And when America elects a gay man to be president, America's fate will be sealed. Then Democrat president candidates 2020 poll, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg lead 2020 Democrats in new Iowa poll, CBS News. To hammer the point home, Pete Buttigieg is in third place in Iowa. Next one is Mayor Pete Buttigieg is the hottest thing in politics. Can it last? Los Angeles Times. Here's more on Mayor Pete. We'll see how he does in the debates and on the campaign trail. If he keeps doing well, the Democrats will have a winner, and America will be lost. Hey, did you like that video? Click like and subscribe and the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified when the next ShockCast happens. There's a lot more on the megashock.com website, and you can subscribe to my newsletter at theshockletter.com for free. Also, remember my book, Ezekiel's Fire. It's also free because I want to help save your life, and you can find it at ezekielsfire.com.